Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Narativ Live. Tonight, we're taking your calls in a very special report. We want to hear who you think President Kamala Harris should be choosing as her running mate, assuming she becomes the Democratic nominee, which she seems on track to be at the upcoming convention in Chicago. Who do you think should be up there on the stage with her? There's a few people lined up here on the right of me that could be amongst those people getting the nod from Kamala Harris. But of course, you might have some other choices, some other people you'd like to see as the vice president. And also, of these, who would you think it's most likely to be? We're very interested in taking your calls tonight. We started this process of trying to get as many of you to call in on the show as possible, especially in these last 99 days as we head into the election, because this is a democracy and your voice matters. And we want to hear from you what you think. So you can call us via phone, 646-770-2959. That's 646-770-2959. Or on the top right of the screen, you can also see there's a QR code there. You can scan that QR code with your phone. It'll take you to an app download. You have to download that app called Stage 10 Connect. Once you've downloaded it, though, you just need that QR code anytime we're on the air. And that QR code will take you live directly to us here on Narativ. It's a great app. No one does anything like this. We're very excited to have this technology, to be the first to use it. Scan that QR code, download the app, and then join me live. Tell me who you think should be the vice president nominee. Let's get through some of who the biggest names are. Of course, we saw this earlier on today. Josh Shapiro is stumping in Pennsylvania. He's been out 4 days in a row now, stumping for the vice president, because betting markets and political experts are all placing their bets on Shapiro as the front runner to join Harris on the Democratic ticket. There's a number of reasons for this. His strong leadership in a crucial swing state. Everybody wants Pennsylvania. That's how you get to win. And of course, that's very true for Kamala Harris. She needs Pennsylvania. Now, he's a very popular, pragmatic governor in Pennsylvania. Does that mean he can deliver the entire state? Who knows? Never really has happened like that before, but in his case, he is incredibly popular and incredibly well-connected. He's got a machine in Pennsylvania, which is very impressive. And many people believe in Pennsylvania that if he is on the ticket, they'll be supporting Kamala Harris. We'll wait to see if he does indeed make it to the top of the ticket. He'll also be the first Jewish vice president of the United States, which would be an interesting thing. If Josh Shapiro is your pick, give us a call, 646-770-2959, or use the QR code and join us via video. Next up, and I put him at a close second, if not a complete tie to Josh Shapiro, is Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg's chances have notably increased. Those performances on Fox News yesterday have really increased Buttigieg's chances of becoming the vice presidential nominee. He now has a 20% chance, according to odd makers, but his profile is so strong nationwide. He's a strong communicator. He can talk multiple issues at one time, and his ability to appeal to younger voters, not to mention his ability to handle Fox News hosts, it's all very impressive. However, as a transportation secretary, maybe he hasn't always been as successful in confronting some of the crises he's faced with, but nevertheless, he is a very popular person, especially amongst younger voters. Now, he's not connected very well with minority voters yet. It'll be interesting to see if he can fix those challenges. But if you're asking me, is Pete Buttigieg going to be the vice president to Kamala Harris? I think it's a tremendous possibility that he will be the vice presidential nominee. And that will be a really unusual thing, because as a gay man with a black woman president, we will not have a straight man in the White House in the executive ranks. That is a particularly big deal, I think, if that in fact happens. And it might symbolize exactly why we've had the sort of Trump MAGA movement all along, is the last stand of the white straight man. It will certainly look like that if Kamala Harris chooses Pete Buttigieg as her running mate for this coming election. In a strong third place, we also saw her today with Joel Shapiro, is Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. Whitmer's strong electoral success in a key battleground state and her focus on issues like reproductive rights make her a formidable contender. She is just lightning when you see her on live. We watched her earlier on stumping with Joel Shapiro for Kamala. Plus, her leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic has also got her a lot of attention. But can we really handle two women on the ticket? An all-female ticket might be just too much for America. Certainly, it will be the first time we'd have a female president, but also a female vice president. Maybe it's one step too far. Who knows? Fourth on our list is Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. Kelly's background as a former astronaut and his strong performance in Arizona, another pivotal swing state, are impressive. But can we risk losing a crucial Senate seat to Republicans. If he joins the ticket, it really leaves us one short, or potentially one short, in Arizona. No one really wants to do that. So Mark Kelly may not make it. Plus, there are some concerns around his security clearance, which we're still looking into. Number 5, North Carolina Governor Ray Copper takes the 5th spot. Copper's extensive experience and steady leadership in a swing state are major pluses. However, his age and limited ability to campaign out of state, he simply can't do that much campaigning out of state because he is a North Carolina governor. That could be quite a drawback, but he's an interesting guy, and Kamala Harris has a previous history with him. We're putting him in at number 5. At number 6 is Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Beshear's bipartisan appeal and success in a red state are noteworthy. He's got a limited national profile, though he did a good job on Monday morning when he showed up on Morning Joe. And Kentucky's deep red landscape might not provide the electoral boost Harris needs. Of course, he comes from Kentucky. Kentucky's not in play. It's not going to be in play. Is there any real benefit to have Beshear on the ticket? Let's see if you subscribe to this idea that picking a vice presidential nominee could actually win you the state they're from. I have my doubts about that. 7th place goes to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. His progressive record and personal wealth are his big assets, but the campaign is hardly short of money, so it doesn't need his money as much. He has limited appeal outside of Illinois, and that could all be a deal breaker. Besides, Illinois governing is very different from the national stage. In 8th, we have Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. His ability to connect with blue-collar Midwest voters is very valuable. It's one of the things they're missing without having Joe Biden on the ticket. But controversies around his handling of a recent crisis might overshadow his strengths. 9th on our list is one of my favorites, Maryland Governor Wes Moore. While he represents a new generation of Democratic leadership and appeals to key demographics, his limited experience in elected office is a significant hurdle. But boy, oh boy, can this man do the job. He's so new, he's so fresh, he's doing a phenomenal job as the governor of Maryland. Is it too soon to make him the vice presidential nominee? Maybe, but boy, would they make an impressive duo, Kamala Harris and Wes Moore as her VP. However, again, you've got the same problem of having 2 African-American people at the top of the ticket. Rounding out our top 10 is Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. Her executive experience is impressive, but her limited national recognition and potential voter hesitation about an all-female ticket push her to the bottom of our list. We also feel strongly about Raphael Warnock. He's a terrific possibility, but we can't imagine Kamala Harris and Raphael Warnock on the same ticket. So our top 2 contenders remain Shapiro and Buttigieg for Kamala Harris to choose from. Now, we want to hear what you think. Call us right now at 646-770-2959. That's 646-770-2959. Or you could use a QR code on the top right of the screen. Scan that with your phone camera. It'll let you open up an app. You might have to download that app, but once you've done it, it'll take you directly to our video screen here, and we'll be able to talk to you live on the air via video, and you can become a regular caller if you want, right here on Narativ. Did I mention that we are giving away one of our brand new tote bags that have just come out on yesterday? They're so hot. They're amazing looking bags. We'll have them on the screen in just a bit. We want you to have one of them. For our best caller tonight, we'll make sure that you get one of those bags sent to you. You know, we're in this incredible moment in history where we might be at the point where we may have no straight man in the White House. There might have been some gay men that snuck in there, but they were still married. We've never had a female president. We certainly haven't had a gay VP. So those 2 things are interesting to see at one time, because it does mean that the sort of great angst that we have been talking about for many months now, that the white male in America has been suffering from, feeling that their world is coming to an end, that their power is coming to an end, that their days are numbered. It is in fact true demographically, the days are numbered for white people in terms of their ability to rule over everybody else, but it's certainly not numbered in terms of them not existing. There's lots of white people in America, and many will continue to be here. But in terms of the way power has always been structured in America from the founders onwards, always been about the white male. Certainly that's the way the Constitution first framed power, and it's the way it was for many, many years. So now, here we are, 250 odd years later into this whole experiment, and we are experimenting now with potentially a first female African-American president, and possibly, I think it might be Pete Buttigieg, who's going to be the vice presidential nominee. So that challenges the fundamentals of who America is. You know, is America this this bro culture, this sports obsessed bro culture that it's always been, or is there a different way for America to be and to be led by a different kind of sensibility? People have often said that women make better leaders than men. Well, if that's the case, what will it look like when America is led by a woman and by a gay man? Will we be more risk averse? But we certainly are not going to go into as many wars, I don't think. Judging by my experience with both women and gay men, they're not as aggressive in terms of their conflicts. Now, does that make us weaker in the eyes of others around the world? Now, I've said rather outrageously today that I think it is going to be Pete Buttigieg. Now, I don't have any inside knowledge that it's going to be Pete, but at the look at that contender list that we had up there, you've got the women. I mean, let's say that maybe Gretchen Whitmer might have a possibility because she's that amazing that she can actually pull it off. And I believe she can. I really do believe she can. I think a ticket with Harris and Whitmer at the top would be phenomenal and would kick a lot of ass around the world. But it's too adventurous and too risky for the Democratic Party right now. And the same goes for Gina Raimondo, who's probably one of the most capable executives in the entire cabinet. She's been a terrific commerce secretary, but she is also, as good as an executive she might be, she's not a Gretchen Whitmer. She doesn't have that profile and that incredible ability to whip up crowds and communicate in the way that Whitmer does. But also Raimondo is just not as high profile. So, she's not likely to make it. She's a woman. She's not likely to see two women at the top of the ticket. As much as I like Wes Moore and as much as I like Raphael Warnock, are we going to have a double African-American ticket at the top of the presidential ticket? I mean, it sure is going to happen one day, but it's going to happen this time round, right after we had the Trump MAGA, uber racists in power. Is it too much of a deflection? Are we moving too far in the other direction? Has this ever happened? No. Is it time for it to happen now? Maybe it's a little dangerous. Maybe. Then, you're left to these governors, the Andy Bashirs of the world and Pritzkers of the world. These guys do not have a national profile. I mean, as much as they might like to say that they do, they don't. Maybe Gavin Newsom has, of course. But the others, I just, they're all great to throw into the mix and to do the auditioning as they've been doing over the last few days with Kamala Harris. But are they real victors here? I don't know. So who's left? Who's left out of that? You've done that elimination of everybody else. And you've got Mark Kelly, who is terrific and an astronaut and super cool, but he's also in the Senate. And if we lose another seat in the Senate, we could lose the Senate. And then there's Pete Buttigieg, who is white, last time we checked, but who is also gay. And that would leave us with a gay VP and a female African-American / South Asian president. Never, ever, ever has that happened. And this may be the time it happens. And anyone who watched Pete's incredible performance yesterday in front of the Fox News audience, Pete Buttigieg is a remarkably skilled communicator who can handle a lot, and he can handle it in the enemy's tank. So let's see what he can do in the vice presidency.
The most, whether we're talking about choice and her stance on defending a woman's right to choose versus Donald Trump, who eliminated a right to choose in this country.
Well, he sent it back to the states, to be fair.
Let's be very clear. He is proud of the fact that he demolished the national right to choose in this country, period.
But there are states that are figuring this out. I mean, there are some that are, it's nearly impossible, a 6-week ban or less. But there are states in this country that allow no restrictions up until the due date of a child.
There was a national right to choose in this country, law of the land, for 50 years, which the vast majority of Americans believe was the right thing to do. But Donald Trump made a promise when he was a candidate, one of the few promises he actually kept, by the way. He didn't keep his promise of 6% economic growth. He didn't keep his promise to drain the swamp.
Well, he did have a pandemic to deal with.
But even before the pandemic,
even
before the pandemic, America went into a manufacturing recession, which really hurt places like where I come from in the industrial Midwest. But anyway, my point is, he broke his promise for that kind of economic growth. He broke his promise to pass an infrastructure bill, right? He said he would do that. He failed to do it. The Biden-Harris administration got it done. He even broke his promise to that January 6th mob when he said, I will be at your side when you march down to the Capitol. We actually did keep two promises. He kept his promise to destroy the right to choose in this country, and he kept his promise on tax cuts for the rich. And if you want to know what a second Trump term would be like, I would start by looking at those rare promises that he actually managed to keep.
He did say that he wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade, but again, send it to the states where they are hashing this out
empower the states to eliminate women's access to abortion. And also, as you know, the Republican Party continues to be interested in a national abortion ban.
Which he's disavowed completely.
Yeah, he's disavowed a lot of things. I don't believe him.
You think that
he lies all the time.
You think that his pledge that he would not pass a national ban is one that
it's one that's going to go down with most of the promises that he's made and broken.
That's impressive. That's impressive. He does really well. He's a great communicator. People love him, and that's for good reason. There you go. Hamilton says, love Gina Raimondo and Wes as well. I agree with you on both of those. Donald M. Bark also says Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is the guy. Many people are very hot on him. I don't know very much about him, but from my research today, it didn't seem like he has enough national profile to really pull this off. Roy Cooper, we were just told, was just removed from consideration for VP. They just told us that on Line Night. So that's interesting. Obviously, the vetting process is underway. They're doing a lot of thorough security checks on all these people. There were some challenges around Mark Kelly's security clearance. If anyone knows what that is, please share it with me online. And then also from Hamilton's, I think Kelly and Shapiro are terrific, but with things so volatile in Gaza, if it may be a problem, Arizona has a Dem governor, therefore she can appoint another Dem to Kelly's seat. Well, that's a good point. Thank you for saying that. Arizona does have a Democratic governor, and of course, Kelly could be replaced. That's a very, very good point. But it is interesting that you're talking about Gaza being so volatile. Just before we got on the air today, came to some information about what's been going on with the war crime situation and the atrocities that some Israeli Defense Force soldiers may have been committing amongst these Gaza civilians that would be held captive. We're about to see, I think, a real escalation of tension around Gaza and around Israel, whether we need someone who's actually really familiar with the situation. What we're losing with Joe Biden, of course, is someone who knows the scene there very well, who knows exactly what Bibi is like, who knows exactly what MBS is like, who understands all these leaders really well. By not having him on the ticket, we're landing up with a campaign that is so much more focused on domestic issues, as it should be in most cases. I mean, there's a lot of very important domestic issues here, but we have sort of, the thing that was driving Joe Biden so much was his defense of democracy. Of course, he still is around and he's defending his democracy every day. We saw him today in action, but, we're going to not see that in the coming administration. There's no doubt that, Kamala can handle some international issues. She can probably handle some of the stuff that she has been up until now. She's been a point person in Israel before. She's done. What we've not seen is someone emerge as a real foreign affairs juggernaut. And in this VP selection, I would have thought that they would be looking for someone who has those kind of foreign affairs chops. And there isn't. There is no one here that I can see, maybe Kelly to some extent, but really probably Buttigieg is probably the most experienced in terms of that. And even then, that's just from his academic knowledge. He served overseas, of course. So he's a veteran. That's very helpful. But is he competent enough on the level of negotiating with Bibi Netanyahu and all these other world leaders, or with Putin or anybody else really over Ukraine? It's really a question. And what may happen is that we just take our eye off the Ukraine situation, and we can't take our eye off the Ukraine situation. The battle for democracy has always been a multi-front battle. It's happened around the world. It's happened in the United States. It's happened in Ukraine, and it's happened in places like Brazil and in the UK as well. So we've seen it emerge in a number of places. If we take our eye off that ball, they'll be fighting for local freedoms and domestic freedoms and, making sure our rights aren't taken away. That's part of the battle for democracy. But the other part of the battle for democracy is making sure that other countries like Ukraine are not smothered by the autocrat, war criminal Vladimir Putin. Let's take a little moment here to take a listen to what it was like today when Shapiro and Whitmer took to the stage together in Philadelphia, or at least in Pennsylvania, to basically audition for the job. And this is what they're doing in terms of auditioning for the job.
I'm proud to be the governor of Michigan, and I am proud to be here with all of you. We are working our tails off to elect Kamala Harris, our next president. And while I'm here, I'll just say, go Birds. With one caveat, when they play my Lions, I'm just saying. All right, football crowd. Let's talk about what we agree on. And this is a place that, based on how the Phillies are playing this summer, Pennsylvania knows a little something about gritty, right? And that's something we share in common. Pennsylvania and Michigan are a lot alike. I want to tell you a little bit about me and why I do the work that I do, because it is about every single one of us. You know, I was raised in a bipartisan household. My dad worked for a Republican governor. My mom worked for a Democratic attorney general. But they taught my siblings the same thing I know a lot of people in this room were taught: the value of hard work. My first job was at a lumber yard. I also stocked the shelves at Target and worked the line at the Royal Fork Buffet. When I went to Michigan State University is when I did an internship at the AFL-CIO. And that's when I fell in love with public policy and understood why it's important that the working men and women of this country have voices and leaders who care about them, right? I ran for the Michigan legislature at the age of 28, and a lot of people said that was too bold, it was too far, maybe I should set my sights lower. But you know what? I ignored those guys. Good. And in my first term in the legislature, I became a member of the sandwich generation. You guys know what that means? I was sandwiched between two generations of my own family for whom I was the primary caregiver. My mother, who was dying of brain cancer at the age of 59, and my daughter, who I had just given birth to. And it was really that time of my life that forged who I am now. I don't have time for baloney. I don't suffer fools. I can't countenance people who want to make problems into something that benefit them instead of just solving the problem, right? I remember long nights worrying about my baby and arranging her childcare, fighting with my mom's insurance company, making sure that I was ready for work the next day and my bills were paid on time. It was not an extraordinary thing. So many Americans, so many Pennsylvanians know what I'm talking about. And I was lucky. I had a great job. I had daycare. I had my family and a voice in my community. And that's what every American in this country deserves, no less. A job that pays you enough to take care of your family, fair wages and good benefits, dignity, decency, and respect. And you know who agrees with me? Our Vice President Kamala Harris does. Pennsylvania.
That guy that you see there is Tim Walz, by the way. He's the Minnesota governor. He's very, very popular. And certainly the impression I'm getting online from a lot of people as we've been talking tonight is that he's one of the guys that we should be really paying attention to as a potential nominee. Now, I am struggling to see it here. But Politico has this to say about the governor of Minnesota. For some rural Democrats in Congress, the elevation of a presidential nominee from deep blue coastal California might hurt more than it helps. To balance the ticket, they're arguing that Kamala Harris needs to tap a running mate who can speak to voters in flyover country. At the top of their wish list is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Although Harris outperforms President Joe Biden across key voting blocks, Democrats running in rural competitive districts this fall fear the former California senator and attorney general is poised to do even worse than the president, especially in battleground states in the upper Midwest. The 60-year-old Walz, who served 12 years in Congress representing a red, mostly rural southern Minnesota district, could bring the guy you would meet at the backyard barbecue in the Midwest vibes to the ticket. They argue, which could help hold off another Democratic freefall in rural regions. Walz has had to run in tough races, and I think that's a great balance because Kamala Harris has a very impressive background, but she's also been in California, which is pretty blue, so it helps to have someone who has had to fight in a close race, said Iowa State Rep J.D. Schulten, who narrowly lost the conservative rural western Iowa congressional seat in 2018 and has argued that Democrats need to refocus on rural voters. She's doing really well, isn't she, in Minnesota? So maybe it's different in other parts of the Midwest. We've definitely lost some stuff with not having Biden on the ticket. I mean, Biden's appeal across the Democratic coalition that he built was to be able to talk to people in those rural areas, in those blue-collar areas, and be able to talk to them in a very direct way that they would understand. He was, after all, from Scranton. That's going to not be there for us anymore. You know, we don't have that at the ticket. So the appeal of someone like Walz, I can get it. I can understand why someone like that would be appealing. Same thing then, you know, it brings us back to Mark Kelly with Andy Bashir. Clearly there's an attempt to negotiate more rural governors into this process. And that is probably why Shapiro is still very much lead every list possible because, you know, he represents some of that. I mean, he's a Jewish dude from Philadelphia, but on the other hand, he's also a guy who was able to win rural voters over in that swing state. And so a number of people are saying here that the governor would be the best choice. And everyone's saying that, yes, Biden brought a lot to the table. He did, didn't he? I mean, it's really a shame not to have him there anymore. Of course, we can't have buyer's remorse because life is like that. I worry a little bit. The history of that's getting washed away a little bit, and especially with this excitement of a new, bright-futured, potentially bright-futured Democratic Party with people like Harris or Buttigieg at the front there. Are we going to remember what we just came from in order to deal with it? Because we still have a very recent history of Russia and other nations interfering with us. They're still pushing their candidate right now. You know, Donald Trump is still the likely winner at this point of the elections. As much as we all want to move into the new world and defend these domestic issues, we can't take our eye off the other factors that got us here, because that war is not over. The disinformation war continues every day. We all deal with it every day. I really thought it was interesting the way Pete Buttigieg responded to this question about old age and about Biden's old age when it came up during the Sunday talk show that he was on. Let's take a listen to that.
Our country has watched our president lead. And yes, we've also seen the fact that he's 10 years older than he was 10 years ago. But unlike Republicans, right, who in Trump's personality cult will take a look at Donald Trump and say he's perfectly fine, even though he seemed unable to tell the difference between Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi, even though he's rambling about electrocuting sharks and Hannibal Lecter, even though he is clearly older and stranger than he was when America first got to know him. They say he's strong as an ox, leaps tall buildings in a single bound. Well, we don't have that kind of warped reality on our side. Well, on the contrary, the president confronted that reality in what must have been one of the most difficult decisions for an American president to make ever. And he did something that I don't think Donald Trump could even conceive of doing, which is putting his own interests aside for the country.
We've watched him get 10 years older. That's a remarkably good answer by Pete Buttigieg on that difficult question. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that was all one big audition. You know, getting him in front of the Fox News audience, definitely an audition. And certainly when he appeared on MSNBC as well, they were all at pain to point out that he was not in his official capacity as the Secretary of Transportation, but just in his own private capacity. You know, the thing that seems to have struck a chord with the people around Walz is the fact that he came up with this weird moniker. You know, everyone's now saying Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are just plain weird. Well, they are just plain weird. They are indeed just exactly that. So let's take a look at how this whole thing starts. This is CBS, WCCO in Minnesota. I remember that station. I've done work with them.
Bloomberg Business Magazine reports that Walz is one of the top 3 candidates. Why is Walz trending, and why are some of his TV interviews going viral? As Esme Murphy reports, it's all about one word: weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird. I see Donald Trump talking about the wonderful Hannibal Lecter or whatever weird thing he's on tonight. That is weird behavior. And I don't think you call it anything else. It is simply what we're observing.
The weird word is headline making for Governor Walz, with the ultimate seal of approval coming from the candidate herself.
You may have noticed Donald Trump has been resorting to some wild lies about my record, and some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
It may be weird, but analysts say Walz has succeeded in labeling Trump in a way Democrats believe is working.
I am sure that the Democrats are doing a lot of polling, and this weird language is very effective.
The result, recognition and Veep stakes possibilities on the rise.
Tim Walz went from an obscure Midwestern governor, if you're thinking of the Olympics of vice presidents, Tim Walz is one of the favorites now.
The final word on the sweepstakes winner, of course, is Kamala Harris's. Other candidates have their strengths. Governor Josh Shapiro represents Pennsylvania, which has 19 electoral college votes. Arizona Senator Mark Kelly was an astronaut and Navy pilot. And Governor Tim Walz has his years as a school teacher, as a member of Congress, and governor. He also has the clout that comes with coming up with the weird label that more and more Democrats seem to enjoy using against Donald Trump. In Minneapolis, Esme Murphy, WCCO News.
Yeah, it sure is nice to hear someone label Donald Trump and J.D. Vance the way he has been labeling people all the way through his election history here. I'm so tired of hearing, about lion so-and-so, about crooked so-and-so and whatever. Now we have weird Donald Trump and weird J.D. Vance. And in fact, they are just the weirdest twosome, aren't they? It just makes me feel uncomfortable watching them at every second. As we continue to see J.D. Vance just fall apart. I mean, there are some people out there who are saying that J.D. Vance could be replaced on the ticket. It's almost like he is a self-fulfilling, self-sabotaging machine, the way he's operating. No matter what he does, he can't seem to mop up his own problems. He makes mistakes, and he's done so many, and then continues to double down on them, and his policies are horrendous. Isn't Shapiro expected to support Israel? Are people complaining that he went too far? I'm not sure what he went too far in, says YT3. I mean, he probably will be supportive of Israel, as America is supportive of Israel. The situation with Israel is that we have a sort of a runaway takeover government there that, like the Trump government, this is a coalition between these strong men around the world, these Putinites, Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump. And there's no coincidence that Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu had a sit down after he sort of met with Kamala Harris and didn't even do a press conference with her. This is the same kind of transnational criminal outfits that are running these countries. Because we need to support Israel the way the rest of the world needs to support America right now in trying to get rid of any threats that Donald Trump may face. So, it's troubling to just look at these countries in one way and say, well, Israel, support Israel, it's not support Israel. When in fact, America is going through the same struggle as Israel's going. The majority of Israelis do not like Bibi Netanyahu, who had not been supportive of everything that's going on. Sure, they're in a war mode, so it changes the way they perceive the world. But, most people there are still opposed to Bibi Netanyahu's leadership. And I think without Bibi Netanyahu in the picture, we may not see the same dynamic going on right now. We may see a different kind of resolution-oriented government in place that is actually interested in working out solutions, not just continuing the fight in order to keep his position in power. Here's the other thing I've been reading about. What the Republicans are really trying to do with MAGA is make one of these secretaries of states, one of these swing states, or one of these red states not ratify the results. Like no one could land up then with the prerequisite number of votes, the 207 electoral college votes. It will then throw the election into the House, where each state has a vote. That is a very troubling scenario because let's assume the Democrats don't win the House. In Mike Johnson, who's a complete MAGA-ite, who's a complete Jan 6 sympathizer, in fact, organized. If they're running the House, and we know that they don't vote with any conscience at all, they could vote Trump in. Donald M. Bark says, thanks, Ev. Miss watching you and Stephanie Koff and Greg Oliar. I miss those days too. Those were good days. We had fun. The most important thing for me is to keep working away at our reporting here on Narrative.
Yes, Steph. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Welcome to the show.
Why do you think that the Democrats are, whoever is in power, whoever is the nominee, in this case Kamala Harris, is not campaigning and talking about accountability? I think personally that if she were to do that, if she says something along the lines that if I get elected, I'm going to make sure all the elite criminals and seditionists get prosecuted. She is a prosecutor after all. I think since Joe didn't do any of that, she just thought it's better to sing Kumbaya and hold hands with the criminal. The Democratic base and are tired of that kind of a stance, and they would welcome someone who is saying, look, I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to make sure all these people are prosecuted.
She positioned herself right at her opening campaign statement was about the fact that she was going to take on Trump as the fellow. I think she's got a tremendous history of being a top prosecutor. And if Trump wins, they all get to survive another day. And if Trump doesn't win, well, then there's a real opportunity to bring down the whole lot of votes. So I think you are going to see a lot more of an aggressive push by.
You think so?
I think so, and I hope so. America doesn't like getting attacked. No country likes getting attacked, and when they got attacked the way they did in 2016, and they've tried to do their best to recover economically and in various other ways, but they still, are going to want their revenge.
We're inferring that from some statements. And as far as Biden's concerned, I don't if he was serious, he would have not allowed Garland to remain in place. And Garland has done a horrible job, in my opinion. He's gone after all the foot soldiers, and he's gone maybe, after the mafia of Sinaloa, but he hasn't gone after the real seditionists and criminals that is just sitting there, having done all kinds of things. And not even nobody's touching him. All of the people in Congress who are part of the January 6th coup have not been touched, and they're passing laws for the last 4 years. And all of these people could have been prosecuted, investigated. Garland was one of the worst attorney generals, in my opinion, and was serious. He would have fired Garland, put somebody in there that was a bulldog, would go after these people, and we wouldn't be in this position. Trump shouldn't even be out of jail right now and threatening to create autocracy. He shouldn't be. He should be in jail by now.
And I think that's true, that it took them a long time to finally get their heads around why they needed to investigate him, and that they could investigate. I agree with you. There could have been a sped up process, and we could have had a different kind of result. On the other hand, I think there was a desire to sort of have this contest at the election and to see if they could figure out a way through the elections. It's a dangerous, risky game they're playing.
Oh, don't talk about dangerous. Wow.
Yeah.
You're talking playing with fire here. We'd be lucky if they don't pull some shenanigans and throw the whole thing into the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will pull a Gore versus Bush scenario again, put the Republican in place. All of this is still a possibility, and to play this game.
It's likely a possibility that is, and so is what I was talking about earlier on about the House being used as a way to elect Trump. There's a lot that could go on. Even if Kamala Harris, if her running mates are able to win a majority of the votes, they end up being able to win enough electoral college votes, and so some secretaries of states refuse to ratify votes. We could be stuck in a position where we go into the House or the Supreme Court.
So what kind of a risky game? What kind of a risky game is it to say that, let's wait and see what the election brings? That'll empower them to think that, we tried and failed the first time, we're going to get it right the next time. You don't allow people that opportunity.
We saw what happened with the Supreme Court. Any attempt to have arrested Trump or whatever earlier on would have also landed up being sort of thrown out by the Supreme Court, I would have imagined, on the same grounds that they've been tossed out now. If anyone, we should be arresting the Supreme Court justices.
The thing is, if you look like you're soft and you're kind of playing with kid gloves on, then it empowers the criminals, it empowers the corrupt people in the Supreme Court, and it empowers everyone. But if you go in there looking like you mean business, you go after all of the Congress and all of the people, everyone who's got such a criminal stench on them, and they're not being touched. What that tells even the Supreme Court is that, we can do whatever we want. Whereas if they see that, they would be afraid of their own skin. And so they would be more careful about how they rule, because they know that, if they don't play fair, the Attorney General might even go after your wife.
Yeah, and look, it's certainly what the Republicans are threatening if Trump is elected. They're threatening to throw a lot of people in jail on day one that they consider their opponents. So,
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see what happens. Who's your pick for VP?
I'm beginning to like what I'm hearing about Walz, personally. I like Buttigieg, but the idea of a woman and a gay man running, I don't know whether that politically would be as effective in swinging some of the Midwest, some of the yahoos of the United States, whereas someone like Tim Walz sounds like he might swing some Trump voters over. What do you think?
I think it's possible. I'm yet to see an election where a presidential nominee is actually able, a vice presidential nominee is actually able to bring a state over with it. It's a nice idea, but I don't know if that's how people vote. They vote for the president, not for the VP most of the time. If Shapiro is probably more likely to be able to do that than Walz, but who knows? I mean, Shapiro is not exactly an old Yahoo. He's not going to fit that role either.
If you alienate those people, I think that's a large chunk that you'd be alienating, whereas I believe that Walz doesn't have that baggage.
Mm-hmm. Good points. Thank you. Ken made some interesting points there about, Trump shouldn't even be running in these elections. Of course, it's easy to say in hindsight, oh, we should have and could have and all these things. But in reality, it was 2019, I think, when we first broke Trump-Russia. And still, some people consider it a hoax today.
One day, you'll tell the story of autocrats, crooks, and kings who came for our freedom. A story of citizens who stood up to tyranny and won. The people prevailed and renewed an old vow to a more perfect union. And that was just the beginning. The story continues. Narativ, where truth lives.